Hey there, I am Barb Higgins, and this is 1,000 Tiny Steps. In this podcast, I share my stories of love, loss, triumph, and tragedy as I continue to retrace my steps and ponder what led to the death of my daughter Molly. By doing so, I hope to not only help myself, but to bring purpose and possibility to those who listen. If you are ready to laugh, cry, shake your head in disbelief, then tie, buckle, lace up, or slip on your shoes and join me as we begin our 1,000 Tiny Steps.
March 20th, first day of spring, vernal equinox, Baha'i holy day Nowruz, which means New Year, the birth of Jack. So I really planned on having Jack in April. He was due in April. Gracie and Molly were born in April. His IVF conception or implantation occurred in the same time span that I created Gracie and Molly. I felt like it was destiny. And of course, destiny does what it does. And when I developed preeclampsia and Jack was encouraged to make his entrance into the world about a month early, I was not too happy about it. I fought it. It was the only thing in that whole pregnancy that I fought. The rest of it I took as the next step in my 1,000 tiny steps through life. In hindsight now, looking back on it, I think it was just an outer symptom of my inner constant feeling of no control, right? So March 20th, 2025, Jack is 4. As I record this, it is almost exactly the time I had him. I think he'd been out of me for about an hour by now. Of the 4 deliveries that I've been a part of, baby Gordy, Gracie, Molly, and Jack, this was the quickest and easiest and shortest duration of pain of all 4 of them. The longest was Gordy, believe it or not. That was like almost a 15-hour ordeal. Yeah, Molly, Gracie, and Jack, start to finish, were roughly 8 hours. That was it. So I can't complain. There are women that go through labor for days. So I'm recording this on Jack's birthday. He turned 4. I've said that already 1,000 times. We woke up this morning and he couldn't believe it was his birthday. I whispered it in his ear a few times. We had a FaceTime with Gracie before we got out of bed. That's always entertaining. And when Kenny got up and we all met downstairs, Jack's desire was to watch Jurassic Park. And we've said no, because, Jurassic Park, it's a bit much for a 4-year-old. And I believe what we said was, when you turn 4, you can watch Jurassic Park, because he took Kenny's face in his little hands and said, "Daddy, I'm 4." So Kenny and Jack watched Jurassic Park. And this is where Kenny is such a good dad. He just gets into it. He got into the movie. He got into answering Jack's 9,000 questions. I brought him coffee refills and I brought them snacks. And while they were watching said movie, I checked my emails. I cleaned the kitchen because we were having a Nowruz celebration here, celebrating the Baha'i New Year. Got a whole bunch of stuff done. I got on the rower and did 20 minutes on the rowing machine. I was able to get some mobility work done. I had a wonderful 2 hours while they watched Jurassic Park. It just makes me laugh. But I also have a child in heaven, 2 children in heaven, 2 children not here. And while I never got to know baby Gordy and was actually relatively healed from that loss quickly, it didn't stay with me like a lot of late-term miscarriages stay with moms. It didn't. And sometimes I have a measure of guilt about it. Like, am I not a good mother because I didn't feel guilty or sad or traumatized or griefed for long enough? But I never got to know him other than his little face, his little body, his little weenie grabbing hand in the ultrasound. I didn't know baby Gordy. I looked at him, his perfectly formed little body. I think I just put it out of my head. I think I put it aside and focused on what I could control, which was getting healthy and losing weight and running fast and creating a stable life for Kenny and I. It was not an easy time at all. But a year later, I was pregnant with Gracie. And 9 months after that, she arrived. And I was swallowed up with the life of an alive child. I was married by the time Gracie was born. So you're hearing this today as you listen. It's Tuesday, April 1st. Molly's birthday is April 1st, and Molly was born on a Tuesday. When I contemplated recording this episode, this is the season of guests, and I'm here by myself. My guests are celestial, Molly and baby Gordy. So I would love it if they would make themselves known on the podcast, but we'll see. If any grieved parents or anyone that suffered a traumatic loss, you know that dates can be tricky. There are dates that remind us of things. There are dates that signify the passage of time. There are dates that wonderful things happen that now evoke tears. There are dates that terrible things happen. When I think of my entire life, I have certain dates that stand out. February 20th, that's the day I started dating David when I was in college. That was a long time ago, several relationships and a couple of marriages since then. And I still remember and think of David on that day. It was a profound time in my life, a troubling time in my life. I was a very messed up human, but still a pretty amazing time in my life. And so I remember it. So as you listen, today is April 1st. So I'm pondering every detail of Jack's birth because I'm recording this on March 20th. And as I sit here in my very messy office with my brand new microphone, if you can see it, all I can think about is Molly. The similarities between Jack's birth and Molly's birth, along with Gracie's, are all of the things that you assume will happen when you have a baby. You're thinking about their milestones. You're thinking about when they grow and what will they be like. You're thinking of the first day of kindergarten. You're thinking of preschool and potty training. You're thinking of all these things because these things are supposed to happen. And in spite of all that I lost with Molly, I still had those feelings the day that Jack was born. I still had excitement. I still do. I still ponder what he'll be like at the different ages that Gracie and Molly were like. In all honesty, though, I have a hard time getting beyond 13. And it's not that I think anything will happen to Jack at 13. I've never had the chance to have a normal teenage experience. Baby Gordy never made it out of my belly. Molly spent 1 month as a teenager. I had 1 month where both my girls were teenagers. And then Molly died. And then Gracie's teenage life became anything but normal or standard. She didn't have any of the milestones that teenage girls have in any meaningful, normal way. Did she have meaningful experiences? Of course she did. But she spent her sophomore year of high school in a fugue, walking around, not really having a handle on anything. She spent her junior year of high school looking at the freshman class, which should have included Molly, and all she could do was think about how much it would be different if Molly were here. She spent her senior year just wanting to be normal. She had a boyfriend. She wanted to be happy. She wanted to go to school and just be normal. She did not want to be the girl with a dead sister. And then I got brain tumors, and her whole senior year was a mess. So do I think about Jack's high school years? I do. With the state of public education right now and the political realities in our country, this is my first child that I'm not sure I'll send to public school. I don't know. And I'm on a school board, and I've been a proponent of public education forever. Healthy societies have public education that's free, that everybody can access. And it has to be quality, or it isn't meaningful. March 20th, 2021. It actually started March 18th when I got diagnosed with preeclampsia. And then it was a 2.5-day battle of me saying, no, I don't want to have a baby, and having a baby. I was admitted Friday night. I went by myself, first time that I've gone by myself to a hospital to have a baby. Kenny was with me for all 3 others. And Kenny arrived the next day, but there were still some COVID issues, and, it was fine. We had Gracie that we were sort of managing and dealing with. She was still pretty upset at the time. It was a event-free night. I was given magnesium for my blood pressure. My membranes were stripped, my mucus plug irritated out so that labor might get sped up. Woke up in the morning and didn't think I'd gone into labor. Nobody woke me up. I slept all night, had a great night's sleep. But I was in labor. And finally, after 2 or 3 phone calls, Kenny arrived. And really, we had about an hour of active labor, and then out came Jack. My first push, the one push wonder. And then my life changed irrevocably, which it does with anyone having a baby. You are extremely different from the baby in the belly to the baby out of the belly. I'm watching some of Gracie's friends have their babies, their first babies, and they're 23, 24 years old, some 25. They're not too young to be starting families, but I dug out a kindergarten picture of Gracie the other day. I was going through a box of pictures, and there it was. And I can't wrap my head around the fact that all those kids are now 25, that it was 20 years ago. It's hard on me sometimes. Kenny and I were alone in the hospital with Jack because of COVID stuff, so he could come and go, but no one else came to visit because they couldn't. It was kind of nice. I was just by myself with either Kenny or the nurses for Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We came home Tuesday. Molly, I had a room full of people when she was born. Katie came. My mother was there. Dr. Walsh and Tina, my delivery nurse, Ellie Duhame. It was crowded. Dr. Nathan came. It was just a whole bunch of people. And then Kenny and Gracie stayed the whole time. I didn't want to be alone. Kenny slept on an air mattress. Gracie was with us a lot. I had been alone with Gracie and had a hard time, and I didn't want to be alone. And so my whole family was there. This chaotic, messy room, replete with Molly. When I brought her home, it was a blizzard, one of those April blizzards, and I had some peace and quiet. Time to get used to the fact that I had two babies. Two babies. What do I do with two babies? And she's not here now. That's really hard on me. It's hard on me today, March 20th, as I think back to her birth. It was hard on me days after she died. The hardest part of grief for me as a child loss mom is the juxtaposition of, yes, they were here, and were they ever here? Life goes along. There's no stopping life. A huge part of my life stopped on May 2nd, 2016. A huge piece stopped. And I circled the airport for a long time. But life goes on. Life goes on. And we have to move along with it as best we can. So we're coming up on year 9. This is the 9th birthday that I've had without Molly. By the time she turned 9, she was as much a part of my life as anything. When you've had a child in your life for 9 years, that's almost a decade. That's a long time. Molly was a 3rd grader when she turned 9 with Mrs. La Rochelle. Jack goes to preschool with Mrs. La Rochelle's grandson. I have a connected life. I have a wonderful life. But that low grade, below the surface, undertowed, the panic, the hurt, the desire to just have her back. 9 years has not taken that away from me, and I don't think it will. One of the most comforting stories that I replay in my head is one of George Bush Jr. talking about his parents. He had a sister, Robin, who died, I believe before he was born, I think, or he was quite young. And he felt that his job his whole life was to keep his mother happy. And I look at Jack sometimes, who's so concerned with my happiness, and I think of him. But the story was that George Bush Sr. was speaking at a Ukrainian or a Russian orphanage, and the sight of all these parentless children, he turned around because he was choking back tears, and he felt that the leader of the free world shouldn't cry publicly. His tears would have helped a lot of people. And the gut-wrenching pain he felt because his little 4-year-old girl had died, 60 years ago. March 20th is a significant day aside from Jack being born. It's the first day of spring. It's a holiday. It has meaning to other people that will never know Jack. April 1st is April Fool's Day. Molly would always say, my birthday's April 1st, but I'm no fool. So there's always stuff going on around April 1st, and it's not a day that I can escape. My birthday is July 29th. Gracie's is April 24th. Kenny's is September 6th, blah, blah, blah. They're just days. There's no big holiday or Hallmark holiday or funny little whatever attached to their birthdays. Baby Gordy is August 20th, 21st, kind of both of those days. Nothing attached to that either. The only thing that made me feel okay about having Jack in March was that he was born on Nowruz, which is a Baha'i holiday. It's New Year. It's the new year in my religion. It's the first day of spring. It's when everything starts over again, when calendar-wise, winter is over. Spring has arrived. It's when the daylight and the darkness are equal amounts of time, 12 hours. It's a good day to have been born. It's a good day to have had a baby. April 1st was too. The year Molly was born, March 31st was a Monday, and I went to school, just like March 31st was yesterday, a Monday. I worked all day. I was big and giant. Molly's due date was April 4th. I didn't really think I was going to go into labor, but I went home feeling funky. I had a bit of a headache, a migraine. And so I called out the night before, said, I'm not feeling well. I have a migraine. I'm going to take tomorrow off. And I remember the secretary said, I bet you're going to have a baby. And I really didn't think so. And I went into labor in the shower. That was when I felt my first ping, little twinge in my tummy. My first little contraction with Molly. That bathtub doesn't exist anymore, but I can stand in the spot in the new bathroom where I probably would have been standing and remember it. My mother was in the kitchen. Gracie was tooling around. She wasn't quite 2. That was at about 7:45 in the morning, and Molly arrived at 3:45. 8 hours. I don't really know what to say except that I feel that on her birthday, on a Tuesday, it means these days of the year are the same as they were the year that she was born. For the rest of this calendar year, Whatever day of the week it is and whatever the date is, that was the day and date it was when Molly was born. That's hard on me. So many things are different. I don't coach track at the high school anymore. I'm not in charge of big track meets. I met Amy and Roy. I didn't know them the day that Molly was born, 22 years ago today. That whole aspect of my life didn't even exist in my imagination. And so here I sit on March 20th, talking to you on April 1st, taking a little break from the guests, honoring two children, a very alive and here Jack, who channels Molly so much sometimes. We were on the phone this morning and we were chit-chatting with Gracie, FaceTiming. And Gracie said something and Jack corrected her in a stern voice. "That's not what I said. What do you think I am?" And Molly was really mad once, and Kenny was trying to talk to her, and she was just angry, and we're all in the car. And Molly goes, "That's not right. What do you think I am, a villain?" And when Jack uttered his little phrase, I could see the look on Gracie's face. Brought right back to that time in the car where Molly made the villain statement, and he was so much Molly in that moment. But when I watch him fall asleep and he's sound asleep on the pillow or on the couch, he's Gracie. He's 100% Gracie. His cheeks and his ears, his curly blonde hair, his posture and his affect is Molly. But when he runs across the kitchen floor, it's Gracie. After Gracie and Molly were born, it would be months before I could watch the news. Everything on the news was too troubling. And I think some of that was my postpartum anxiety and depression. And I know with Jack, it was the same way. Kenny and I binge watched Queen of the South and Yellowstone and all these TV shows. I still can't watch a lot of those shows. I can't watch the violence. The whole time I was pregnant, I had no trouble with it. It's bizarre. And a long time after Molly's death, I couldn't do birthdays or anniversaries or holidays. I didn't want to continue some sort of tradition that suddenly didn't include Molly. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't function. And now I have Jack, and I can't deprive Jack of birthdays and holidays. One thing he does know, though, is that the holidays come every year, but he's not attached to a certain way of celebrating them. And I think that's likely a healthy way to raise him right now. We always do a birthday cake for breakfast, and we did not get a birthday cake. I haven't gone out to buy it yet. But he'll have his cake, and it will be his birthday, and we will sing to him, and he will know that he is now 4. But next year, it might be completely different. Maybe we'll have a birthday party at a place, like a ninja gym birthday or something like that. Birthdays for Gracie and Molly were such a labor of love for me. Big parties. I'd have them together because they had a lot of common friends, and we always had them here at home till they got bigger, and then we had them at Flips at a gymnastics gym. But their birthdays they're probably some of my happiest memories. Gracie still has a hard time in April and around her birthday because what she grew up with for 15 of her birthdays, 13 of her birthdays, she doesn't remember the ones without Molly, were that there was 2 parties celebrated and someone to play with the toys with. So why am I recording this lonesome podcast in the middle of my season of guests? Because it's Tuesday, April 1st, 2025, and Molly should be turning 22. We should be celebrating whatever that might look like. That's what should be happening. And it isn't. And that makes me angry. Some of the people I've talked to that will be coming up in episodes down the road here in April and May are other mothers that have lost children. I have a couple of mothers who have very alive children, but very different than they thought might happen for them. I have a couple of mothers who have learned a lot of life lessons by being a mother. Most of my next guests talk about mothering, whether it's mothering alive children, mothering children with disabilities, mothering in the wake of drug addiction, or mothering after losing other babies. Am I the consummate mother? I don't know. I do know that I ache for Molly so much sometimes I can't function. Today's one of those days. So what's my message in this? I don't want to depress all my listeners if you're still even listening at this point. My message is sometimes people in grief and trauma have to just talk about it. We have to say the words. We have to acknowledge the days and dates. There's a lot of wonderful things going on in my life. As I record this, and March is just winding down, the CrossFit Open just ended. I've had one of my best CrossFit Opens ever. I did standardly well in 2 of the workouts, and I kicked major ass in the 3rd one. I was 50th out of 2,000 women. I find that to be okay. Granted, all 2,000 women were between the ages of 60 and 64, but still, the 2,000 of us are miles ahead of the average woman in her early 60s. I love my CrossFit life. I have a wonderful coach I'm working with who is patient and understands all my idiosyncrasies. And I think I'm on a good path with him. I have so many questions. I want community for Jack. I ache sometimes that I didn't have another baby right away after him, really push for that because he's really an only child. But then I think to myself, my main reason for having Molly was to give Gracie a sibling, and we lost her anyway. Would Gracie's life have been easier if there never was a Molly? That's a hard question to ask out loud, but I'm going to put it out there because all of us think these things. Try to imagine our lives with a major event missing from it. Yes, maybe Gracie would have been different as an only child, but she would never have had a sister and then lost her. She wouldn't know what she was missing. Is one better than the other? I don't know. A former athlete of mine just lost her husband. He died very unexpectedly in his very own home at the age of 39. That's insanity. She has 2 little kids, ages 4 and 6, I believe. How do you rethink your life? And I think about her every day because she's in those early days where the dust has not even come close to settling. There are still frozen meals in her freezer, and there is money in the bank that she can use to take care of bills when she falls apart and doesn't know what to do. She's lost her husband's income and her partner in crime and her father of her kids. I wouldn't go back to those days for all the money in the world. I wouldn't. Even to try to do a better job of grieving, out of my mind. Sadness. Really difficult. So it's April. So the year Molly died, I started doing 100 burpees a day. And I only did them until about the first Monday she was in the hospital there, May 2nd. And then I stopped doing pretty much everything. But I've often thought of doing that again, 100 burpees a day again, or 100 of something a day. 100 air squats or 100 push-ups. What I like about burpees, it's a full body movement. I think I'd like to do 100 burpees again, 100 burpees a day, and dedicate them to Molly and to the year that will bring us to a decade of Molly gone. A decade. I imagine most of her friends don't even think about her much anymore. And it's okay. I didn't think about Maura much either. Or David Verrill, or Christine Paveglio, or Sue Kilmister. Or John Powers. They all come back. I didn't think about them though. I just didn't. I'll wrap up here. I apologize sort of for the nature of this podcast, but every once in a while, I think a podcast that's just a real, hey, come sit on a log with me and listen while I'm sad episode is a good thing for everybody. It's a good thing for me. It's a good thing for those of you that have never gone through any of these things to sit in it with me. Just sit in it and listen. And it's a good thing for those who have gone through this to know that you're not alone. That, Barb Higgins here, welcoming you to my sadness, is struggling today. A lot. And I imagine when the actual April 1st comes, I'll be struggling as well. Tuesday, April 1st. 2025. 22 years ago at 3:45 p.m., Mary Elizabeth Banzoff made her entrance. In that very same building, 13 years and 1 month later, she made her exit. So listen, be good to yourself. If you need to cry, let yourself cry. Hold it in and go for a walk. Go to a forest and scream at a tree. Swear the alphabet. Cry. On a podcast recording, do what you need to do. But be good to yourself and be good to someone else. If the someone else in your life is someone like me, just be there for them. Just be the light in someone's tunnel. It's more helpful than you know. And as always, have a good day, everybody.
Hey, thanks for listening and supporting the podcast. Feel free to leave a review and share my stories with your friends. Please reach out with your own stories, as I love connecting with my listeners. If you would like to get to know Molly, head over to mollybfoundation.org to see what she is all about. If you want to see what I'm up to next, you can find me on Instagram at barb_444, on Facebook as Barb Higgins, and at my website, 1000tinysteps.com. And while you're there, sign up for my newsletter. a weekly way to find out what's up in the life of Barb Higgins.